Hey, what's up, y'all? I want to go through what monsters in RuneScape used to look like. I feel like most newer players won't know most of these. I'll even be throwing in some models that some experienced players might not be familiar with from the very early days of RuneScape 2 as they were updated pretty early into the game. I won't be pulling up what things currently look like in old school RuneScape and RuneScape 3 as a lot of you guys actively play those games or at least know what the models look like. Let's go. Let's start off with lower level creatures and work our way up for the most part. I compiled a list from the RuneScape Classic Bestiary and highlighted the more important monsters in green, while some quest and redundant monsters are in blue and red as they just appear too similar to other creatures. The Imp's old model was just a small shrunken demon. In the early RS2 days, the Imp appeared as some dude in a devil suit, kinda cool. Actually, you know what, that's kinda weird, he's weird. He looks like a little weirdo in that devil suit. Here's the rat and the spider, the basic ones you can find in most houses on modern RuneScape. Not too much to them, they're just tiny. Here's the chicken. It's bringing back some bad memories because it took me a good while to get off a tutorial island in Classic due to the Windstrike spell failing so many times. When a spell fails on Classic, you have to wait 20 seconds before casting again. The monster that had probably the coolest walk animation was the goblin. There's many variations of levels of the goblin in all versions of RuneScape. Here though, the majority look like this. There's a lesser known goblin model from the very early RS2 days as well that I'll throw up on screen. Cows, the noob's best friend and moneymaker in the early days of RS2. Cool. They also had an older model in RS2 as well before they were updated. Giant spiders. There were a few variations, the ones in Lumbridge for lower levels, there were some in Deep Wilderness, and the variations in Underground Pass. Speaking of, look at Calrag, the spider boss from Underground Pass. They just made him freaking giant. One of the many noob killers in RuneScape, the Mugger is next. I know a ton of botters in lower levels that died from these guys in RS2. Another bane of the RuneScape noob is the Dark Wizard. They are always around lower levels of the game and even gatekeep one of the paths to Varrock. These were definitely more dangerous in early RuneScape 2 due to monsters having magic, but they were in Classic too. Keeping the trend of noob killers and annoyances alive, we had the Highwayman. Stand and deliver. Monks, bald humans in brown robes, popular to train on. Soulless are the guys seen in the Underground Pass quest on the very bottom floor and in cages. On RuneScape 2, they resembled mummies. Collodion, the guy from the Mage Arena quest that's fought inside of the arena with all the transformations, spider and such, skeleton, zombie, turns into what appears to be a giant soulless in the classic version. Wizards, humans in blue robes. Wizards on this game weren't really wizards as they just start punching you immediately upon attacking them. Dwarves looked like this. Thugs looked like this. Chaos Druids were still heavily botted, at least when I played Classic in 2018 or so before it closed. Human in red robes, speaking of humans in red robes, Iban Disciples and Monks of Zamorak can be thrown in here too, they look pretty similar to each other. Skeletons are always cool in my opinion, but they had the most irritating sound effects in Classic. In RS2, the shield skeleton wore what looked to be a magic purple shield. This is one of the few clips I could find still on YouTube thanks to old PKers. Zombies had a blue look to them. This look translated into the early RuneScape 2 days before the graphical update to them. Scorpions were still very annoying for low-level miners. King Scorpions looked similar, just a bit bigger. Unicorns were on Classic, so were the black unicorns, popular for herblore. I'm gonna knock out a bunch of generic enemies on the list with the Shapeshifter from Witch's House. This thing sucked on Classic for lower levels. Combat was 3 turns, and in Classic, you couldn't eat while in combat. If you tried to click off to temporarily end combat in order to eat, the fight started over from the first form. The Shapeshifter included a spider, a bear, and a wolf. These variations can be matched to their counterparts out in the RuneScape world. Ghosts had a green tint to them and were found in all the usual areas. Pirates, guards, the ones in Artie still attacked you back then if you were stealing. Druids, humans in white robes. Hobgoblins looked similar to regular goblins, just higher leveled. They had a different looking variant with the spear. Umli birds are more quest related, but I'll include it anyways. Deadly red spiders could be found in Varrock sewers, Karamja volcano, and the wilderness. They resembled the other spiders in game, just red. I'm gonna try and knock out all the giants in one go. Hill giants in Classic were just called giants. Here's what they looked like in early RS2. Moss giants had a staff and a slightly green beard. Here's what they looked like in early RS2. Ice giants looked similar to moss giants in RSC, just blue. In early RS2, they had this sick mohawk right here. Fire giants were similar to the previous two in Classic, but they were red. They looked pretty crazy in the early RS2 days. Black Knight Titan's a giant as well. In RuneScape Classic, he was basically the Black Knight model, just scaled up. Oh, by the way, here's the regular Black Knight model. A lot of people think the one currently on Old School is the old model. It's not. It's very similar, but here's a side-by-side. Tribesmen are found on Karamja present day. These are the ones that hold spears and were used in some early lures on RuneScape 2 due to their high poison damage. These were on Classic as well, only they used swords. The Khazard soldiers that terrorize the gnomes are shown here, as well as the boss for the Tree Gnome Village quest. Speaking of quest bosses, this is Count Draenor. Most vampires didn't have unique characteristics on Classic and simply resembled regular human NPCs. Another kinda quest boss was Melzar the Mad in the Dragon Slayer quest, another human-like character. Jungle spiders resemble deadly red spiders, just green. The battle mages found in Mage Arena can be seen in this clip alongside Collodion right here. Elemental warriors on Classic shared the same characteristics. Jagex just made them bald and colored them to whatever the color of their element was. Ice warriors were bald, held a mace, and were blue. Earth warriors were tan colored. Shadow warriors were darker colored. The Ice Queen fought during the Heroes quest was also bald and just had different clothing. White Knights were more like Grey Knights. They wandered around Falador Castle, similar to the two present games that are still active. Jogers were more human-like rather than the beast-like look they have present day. They were large, green, and carried a spear. Ogres looked similar and had a similar size, they just carried maces. Chaos Dwarfs, pretty annoying. Ice Spiders, like most other spiders, only light blue. Otherworldly beings, the dudes found in Xanaris resemble what they are present day, clothing on an invisible person. These are the Paladins. They're located in Arty Castle on Classic. Found closely near them were the higher leveled heroes. Heroes were rumored to drop their rune armor in early RS2. This led to lower levels wasting a lot of hours killing them. The lesser demon is pretty nostalgic to me. I spent hours training on the one on the top floor of the Wizard's Tower around 2006 trying to get my magic level up and get that coveted rune med drop. I ended up doing the same thing on RuneScape Classic many years later. I'm sure this one is pretty nostalgic to most of you guys out here that played back then. Greater demons were similar looking, just larger and higher leveled, and they dropped the rune full helm. If you notice, these demons have the same look as the imp, they're just far larger. While we're on the topic of the demons, the black demon was released in 2002 and resembled the greater, it was just all black. Here's their awesome monster models from early RS2. General Khazard and Bouncer could be found in the Fight Arena quest, just like in present-day RuneScape. Bouncer resembled a shadowy wolf. This was the same for all other Hellhounds in the game. Blue dragons were the lowest level dragon in RuneScape back then. Many could be found in Taverley Dungeon, and one could be found in the Heroes Guild. Here's the early RS2 version of the blue dragon. The reason why I said blues were the lowest and not green is due to the fact that Elvarg, the dragon from the Dragon Slayer quest, was the only green dragon in the game in Classic at 110 combat. It was simply called Dragon, or the Dragon. Blues were only 105 combat. Old green dragon RS2 model right here. Red dragons were in the game as well, but were only found in Deep Wilderness. This is my favorite dragon in RuneScape as I think they're underappreciated. Here's the early RS2 version. Next, we have the black dragons. These were very dangerous in Classic, sitting at level 200. Early RS2 version right here. I decided to include Chronozone in here because he looks different than the other demons with a darker red color. He's the boss from the Family Crest quest that has to be hit with the various blast spells. Last but not least, the most deadly monster of all in Classic, hands down, was the King Black Dragon. This was the only boss in the game outside of quest bosses and was a major goal for high levels in the game. It resembled a black dragon, it was just far more deadly and higher leveled. It was one of the only sources for the Dragon Medium helmet in the game, the best in slot helmet in the entire game at the time. The early RuneScape 2 version was not as deadly due to the 3-hit combat system being phased out in the transition from Classic to RS2. It had golden horns and looked pretty cool. So that's about it for the video. I didn't include redundant monsters or ones that looked similar to others. I also tried to avoid including a lot of quest monsters such as the Grand Tree and Legends Quest Demon, as they just resemble a black demon for the most part. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed the video. Did you know about all these models? Let me know down in the comments. If you're a fan of true crime, I have a second channel, The Crime Historian, which will be in the description below. Thanks guys and have a good one.